Hello again, I'm Zane Zog, and it's time for another episode of Me and Rosy. Me and Rosy, we were walking up this dirt road we live in, trailing orange and ochre dust behind us in this warm breeze. We were headed to visit our new dear friend, Bruno, Richard Hauptmann. He had been fried in the electric chair decades before we met him. And then he came back to life like it's a form of spontaneous generation. People misunderstand metaphysics. They were right. People were right the first time about spontaneous generation. Life forms just appear. Bing. You don't see it happen. Life is a sneaky process. The scientists are lying assholes. They never admit to this, but see, like dead people come back to life spontaneously. Bing! And right down the street from us, Bruno Richard Hauptmann, the famous guy who might or might not have killed the Lindbergh baby. He just, bing, like spontaneously came back to life after being executed in an electric chair. And he's our neighbor. So me and Rosy, we're walking up the street. We're going to visit our dear friend Bruno. He's been so conversant. He's just been so helpful around the community. He's one of those people, if there's something wrong with your wagon or something, like you need a cotter pin. He's one of those people who usually, he always wears a tweed suit and a tie, but he has greasy cotter pins with him, in case your wagon goes bad, I don't mean those little ones. I mean big. The cotter pins, we still use wagons, and horses and jackasses and shit. And it's 2024, but okay, it's a little bit historic. Not our history, my history. I don't know about your history. My history doesn't really go back all that far. And I believe in spontaneous generation, in which people simply pop into existence wherever the fuck they are. What's the big deal? Anyhow, Bruno, we were on our way. The police showed up. Me and Rosy were just walking down this dirt road, peaceful as lambs, and the cops pull up. They want me. So Rosy's gonna get free. We'll be spending the afternoon with Bruno Richard Hauptmann. She'll be talking about him later. But for right now, I'd like to talk about being taken to a police station in West Virginia and questioned about a string of burglaries. And I was innocent. I didn't do anything. They let me go. Okay, obviously I was not incarcerated or whatever, sodomized, beaten up. But no, none of that took place. They weren't very nice to me. They were yelling at me. They were calling me ugly names. They called me a piece of shit. They said things like, why was a piece of shit like you installing useless burglar alarms all over Pennsylvania? And I was explaining as rationally. I was a little upset. I mean, I'm a gentle soul. I'm calm, usually. Meditative, but I was explaining to these police officers who were grilling me, I had no idea the burglar alarms I was installing don't work. It was Mike Spuke's fault. I mean, he put me up to it. He gave me a job. He bought those defective alarms, and I had been trained, in Monroeville through a federally funded jobs training program, how to install burglar alarms. It's their fault, not mine, that none of the burglar alarms that I installed worked. As it came with a little instruction sheet. You use a screwdriver and screw them into this. You put 4 screws into the side of everybody's wooden cabinets in their trailer or house. You press this button and you hold it down, and a diode blinks 3 times, proving to you and God and everyone else, all of humankind and God, that blinking diode proves that this burglar alarm works correctly. What a letdown it was to learn that every burglar alarm I'd installed from Mike Spuke for $20 a session Anyway, it was a low-paying job considering I was on the road all day in this miserable hatchback that Mike provided. He was always driving this beautiful, expensive, metal flake muscle car. He was driving that's how I met him, in fact. But it was all over creation selling his burglar alarms. And then he hired schmucks like me to install them all over creation. And for the next 6 months, people who installed the alarms were being investigated by police agencies because every place they were installed, the house was like in 100 cases plus, no, hundreds of cases, people who had the burglar alarms were burglarized and their neighbors were left completely alone. I was explaining that wasn't my fault. But anyway, those police officers were really pricks to me. And if you're following the story of me and Rosy, the Spuke dynasty is very well liked throughout Pittsburgh. Everybody adores them. They own thousands of family businesses. There are millions of cousins and uncles all named Spuke. Doris Spuke is a wealthy heiress, and she's a dear friend of my common-law wife, Rosy's. That's another thing about this place down here. Well, when me and Rosy, when we were still living in Pittsburgh, for instance, Rosy was a nurse. She lost her license. I was learning how to install burglar alarms and I was going to start a whole new life, as a burglar alarm installer. That aspect of my life went to shit. And I've been hearing from the police ever since. But anyway, Rosy, a little later this afternoon, Rosy will be, or maybe now, she might be doing it now for all I know. She'll be conversing with the late Bruno Richard Hauptmann in his cabin. I'll be getting finished with the problems I'm having soon. The police were so unpleasant when they hauled me in. The other day, for instance, they were yelling at me and they said, "You're a junkie, you're a piece of shit." And I said, well, how do you know? Anyway, what the fuck? It's one of those things. It's a tense way of living. It's very uncomfortable to be in a common law marriage, Well, maybe it's just us. Maybe we're the only two common law spouses who are addicted to Dilaudid and happen to have a whole gallon to use as we wish. So that just happened when we moved down here. A biker gang gave us drugs free. It's a common scam, nothing to worry about, no big deal. Lots of people work this way. They give people huge amounts of free drugs. They become addicted to the drug. We were already junkies, me and Rosy. They did not get us hooked on drugs. We already were. But it's a common practice to get people hooked on drugs and then force them to sell drugs or spend whatever assets they have obtaining them. People will steal from others to get drugs. They'll work a circuit of trailer parks and housing develops in which for instance, sometimes when hundreds of defective burglar alarms have been installed all over the region, junkies will burglarize these houses in series because there's rats like Mike Spuke who tell them where to go. Anyhow, he's a terrible person. Rosy is having a love affair with Mike's sister, Doris Spuke. That's why I'm trying so hard to forgive Mike Spuke for what her brother, Doris's brother, did this to me. I'm trying to forgive Mike for all the pain and difficulty. I was yelled at for hours by two vicious detectives. They called me everything in the book. Nobody's bothering Mike about it. Mike ran the business, the burglar alarm business, but he's so everybody just loves this guy. Well, it's not just Mike. Everybody loves the entire Spuke dynasty. And Doris, our house guest, everybody loves Doris. You know, we're lucky to have her as a long-term guest. Anyway, Doris is addicted to hard narcotics, and that's why she's a dear friend, a lifelong friend of my common-law spouse, Rosy. So what could possibly go wrong there? And she's Mike Spuke's brother, so no matter how bad I am in Dutch with Mike Spuke and the police, we can all work this out together. Thanks for listening. There'll be more information coming soon about my life and Rosy's life and everybody else's life on a dirt road. We're all just holed up on in this miserable location after our lives went to shit. As we were living in Pittsburgh, our lives went to shit, and now we live in West Virginia, pathetically and miserably. And Jesus fuck, we're happy. We're just happy. Everything's fine. Thanks for listening. I'm Zane Zog.